Hello everyone and welcome to Cinderful Gaming. I hope you're all doing well, I hope you're all staying safe, and most of all, I hope you are all fighting that war against the grey. Today we have got another wish listing video. This series of videos has been getting rather popular and we're coming near the end, but today we are looking at 10 things I'd like to see for the Maggotkin of Nurgle. There are no right or wrong answers in this video, just me making some wish listing about this particular faction. If there is stuff you would like to see for this faction, please leave some comments down below, and also if there are a faction we haven't touched on yet that you would like to see us touch on, please leave that in the comments down below as well. But enough chit chat, let's get into this. This is 10 things I'd like to see for Maggotkin of Nurgle. Number 1, I'd like to see some Chaos Cultist models or potentially Plague Zombies. So, I know the sort of mortal version of Nurgle we have is the current Blight King models, and that's really cool and everything, but I feel like very much how other armies potentially don't have their just generic cultist sort of model. I reckon the Karak Acolytes and Blood Reavers for both Tzeentch and Khorne respectively are fantastic models and really give you that down-to-earth sort of look at the base sort of guy that is in a Nurgle army. I think some Nurgle cultists would go a long way. Potentially alongside this would be a great way to do a dual kit potentially, is make them a dual kit with Plague Zombies. If many of you remember, Plague Zombies from way back when in Warhammer 40k were a really cool thing. I think they transferred AOS really well. You have this Plague of Death and it effectively reanimates the corpses and you have these plague controlled zombies. It also creates some cool narrative to go along with that and sort of maybe even makes sense knowing like we've had the Necroquake since we've got our last Nurgle Battle Tome and all that sort of stuff. So maybe the Plague Zombies are a result of some sort of thing to do with the Necroquake. Who knows? Point number 2, Nurgle to me feels like it's lacking a bit in the Daemon department. There are other sort of God allegiances that just have more Daemon options than Nurgle, and I'd like to see maybe an elite Plague Bearer option. Some more heavily armoured or potentially bigger Plague Bearers that are a bit more tougher and meaner than your average Plague Bearer, and a bit more less zombie, Cyclopean zombie, and more like geared up fighter. These dudes would be more of a retinue honour guard of sorts for maybe the Great Unclean Ones or other demonic heroes, and I think it would be a cool addition to the Nurgle army to have a more elite Daemon unit that's outside of, I guess, the Plague Drones. I touched on it a little bit before, but point 3 is we've not had a Nurgle Battle Tome obviously since Malign Portents and all the stuff with the Soul Wars and Necroquake and all that. So it's important for me that we know what's next for Nurgle. I was mentioning before, maybe the Plague Zombies have got something to do with the Necroquake, but what is Nurgle's grand scheme now? What is his army aiming for? We know that Slaanesh is potentially almost being freed and probably will be freed sometime in the near future, in the next year or so, I reckon. So how does Nurgle feel about this? Nurgle is obviously not one of the gods more opposed to Slaanesh, and his sort of main opponent is Tzeentch. So how do they see this? Because obviously Khorne is going to get his major adversary in the Chaos Pantheon back in Slaanesh, so maybe Khorne will be a little bit occupied, and maybe it's Nurgle and Tzeentch that'll be the two sort of powers fighting for dominance in the realms at that point. It's an interesting story to look into, and I hope that we get some more information on what Nurgle is actually doing. It's also an interesting thought that Nurgle is the only god to have been touched by the Stormcast. They actually wounded him, and they made him feel for the first time in aeons. So let's see how that goes. Number 4. I'd like to see some more Lords, and we've got them in the picture here of the Magath Lords and Glotkin. We haven't seen the Glotkin since he failed Nurgle many years ago in the Age of Sigmar lore in the Realmgate Wars. I think it's time to bring back that devoted servant, maybe some new lore behind, and maybe some new rules to show that like Nurgle is not exactly taking the failure of these particular characters very well. Be an interesting way to see. We know a little bit about like other characters that failed, so things like Gutrot Spume, he failed, and Nurgle's not particularly in the a happy mood with Gutrot. So maybe he's quite like his more leader dudes who were the Glotkin and that, in even worse favour with their god, and maybe he's now sent them out to do some tasks to try and allow them to earn back his favour. Nurgle is a very loving character in general, and so he always will be trying to allow his disciples to redeem themselves. Number 5, and I mentioned this in anything that's not a Tzeentch one, and that is that I want to see Pestigors. I want to see the old Beastmen models come back with the whole marks and all that. And I mean this by not just, obviously, I know we can take marks on Pestigors and stuff now, but the Tzaangor are such an amazing kit. I'd like to see the Pestigors reimagined much like they were. We used to, in Beasts of Chaos, have Pestigors, Khorngor, Slangor, and Tzaangor. And we've obviously got updated Tzaangor sculpts, but I reckon all Chaos Gods deserve their Pestigor equivalent. Then it will also allow you to take beasts in a Maggotkin of Nurgle army without having to take the battalion that we currently have to do. Point number 6 for me is I want to see a bit more of the narrative behind the relationship with Clan Pestilence. They're not sort of true devotees of Nurgle, and they're not sort of true devotees of the Horned Rat. They sort of flitter between the two in some weird sort of, Nurgle's a contagion thing, but the Horned Rat, we believe it's the Horned Rat in his contagion thing. It's all a bit up in the air on like where they actually sit, and in fact probably many different Skaven from Clan Pestilence and its Thrall clans sit in very different alignments. I think a bit more lore on how they both feel about each other would be a great thing to have, and just allow us to push the narrative forward with this sort of relationship. Number 7, I'd like to see some individual Nurgling models. And we've had all these fantastically little Nurgling sculpts all over a bunch of the Nurgle miniatures, and it's amazing. I'd like to see, though, maybe a kit somewhat akin to the Gobbapalooza for Gloomspite kits. What I mean by this is little Nurglings that provide buffs all around your army, and they're sort of demi-heroes or semi-heroes, not quite heroes, that you can purchase as a bulk in like some little battalion. Maybe there's, because they're a little bit smaller than Grots, maybe there's like 6 or 7 of them. They're always different sort of Nurglings. They'll provide like these small little buffs around the army, but really give us some unique way to build some really cool looking little Nurgling models. Because I don't know about you, but if there's anything I like from Nurgle, it is definitely the Nurglings. They're fantastic little sculpts. I'd like to see what they can do when they have a bit of freedom to do something like the Gobbapalooza style thing with Nurglings. Number 8, there are 2 particular models for me that I'd like to see updated for Maggotkin of Nurgle, and that is most certainly Epidemus and the Chaos Sorcerer of Nurgle. Both of these models are quite dated, quite old, and really do need an update for me. I think a new Epidemus model would go a long way to just improving upon what the model currently is. It's probably one of my least favourite models around, and definitely probably my least favourite model in the Maggotkin range. The Chaos Sorcerer Lord, he just needs an update. I know we've got that whole cool new Wormspat model, but I think just a generic one would be really cool to have as well, but though not probably as required, because you could just go get the Warcry Warband for now. Number 9, I'd like to change something mechanically on how the army works. So at the moment you take these trees that sort of fester up around the table, and they provide like this little buff around them. However, I think something that would be cool is to show like the corruption around them, and perhaps the trees work in a way similar to maybe the Beasts of Chaos Herdstone, on how its buffs get bigger and bigger and bigger as the game goes on. I think this would be a really cool way to do it, and show like the contagion spreading across the table in waves of filth and disgustingness. But I think that's just an idea on like how to maybe improve upon the mechanic that is currently there. Number 10 for me, most certainly without a doubt, is let's see some endless spells for Nurgle. I think a couple of these are sort of easy enough to figure out what they should be. You can have a giant pot of boiling pus, maybe a cauldron similar to like the Arachnid Cauldron, allows the wizard to get better for his own casting bonuses, a giant some like vines, or like maybe Nurgle's garden as a wall, some like garden that provides a line of sight blocking, as well as like minuses to hit, or stuff like that would be really cool. But anyway, that's enough chit chat for me. That's 10 things I'd like to see from Maggotkin of Nurgle. I'd really like to know what you would like to see for this army. They're a really cool army, and I've only just painted up my first 5 Blight Kings for Warhammer Quest. Painted up Hammerhall set not long ago, and I really want to paint up some more Nurgle. Those Blight Kings were just so much fun to paint. They're such fun models to put together as well, and just they're utterly fantastic. So can't wait to get cracking on some more Nurgle. So anyway, leave your ideas of what you'd like to see from Nurgle down below in the comments. If there's a faction I haven't done, there's not many now that I haven't done, leave that in the comments down below and it will be the next one I do. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We're getting so close to 1,000 subs now. It's amazing. And there will be some very special sort of giveaways once we reach that 1,000 milestone. But for now, stay safe everyone, stay well, keep fighting that war against the Grey, and I will see you all again real soon.